Okay, everybody, so here we go. My third installment of solo whiskey reviewing. So if you're here and watching this, then I thank you for continuing to check out the solo videos. As I mentioned previously, they were essentially a necessity because bottles are getting buried in the back of this shelf that hadn't been reviewed and hadn't been looked at, tasted for a long time. So this is exactly one of those bottles. What happens is if you don't review a whiskey within a reasonable time after buying it, something like this could happen. It could lose its age statement, or it could get discontinued like the last week's version. But this one, the Knob Creek 9-year-old, aged 9 years, there it is. For some of you, you may have never seen this label with the actual 9 right there. So, Knob Creek is a Jim Beam product, and let's get my coaster out, get my coin out. So Knob Creek is part of the Jim Beam small batch collection, which includes Baker's, Booker's, Basil Hayden, and Knob Creek. And it used to have a 9 on it, and now it doesn't. So the reason for that, as I understand it, is that Knob Creek doesn't have the stocks of exactly, 9-year-old bourbon to put in here. What they have said, or to continue to put in here, what they have said, though, is that they are committed to maintaining the flavor profile, but they can't actually keep the age statement. So you can't exactly blend half 10-year-old bourbon with half 8-year-old bourbon and get a 9, but it's something like that. Essentially, they are looking to blend their whiskeys to get this flavor profile, to continue to get this flavor profile that's in this 9-year-old version. So I don't, it actually would be interesting to purchase a non-age statement version and head-to-head it against the 9. Maybe that's a video for Trenny and I to do in the future on a Thursday. But anyway, so this is the Knob Creek Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey, small batch, aged 9 years. This is about a $50 bourbon here in Canada. Readily available. And I gotta say, when I first tried Knob Creek, I did not like it. There was something about it. I think it was the heat and the spice and just the aggressiveness of this bourbon when I was a bourbon novice, let's say. The interesting thing is, fast forward a few years, and I'm blind choosing it as my favorite small batch over even Booker's. So, it goes to show that as you progress in your whiskey journey, your palate can evolve, and really just your knowledge can evolve. And when you first start tasting things, you feel a harshness or a heat or a bite, but once you start to learn about it and you kind of understand why that's there, I think you maybe learn to appreciate some of those flavors and some of those feelings, and you even desire them in future tastings. So that's kind of cool in a way, to go from having a bourbon that I really didn't like to something that I was picking as my favorite. So, right away on this one, kind of a pecan pie kind of thing going on with it. Because it has a nuttiness to it for sure. Slight mustiness to it. And I think that's the interesting thing about when I started bourbon. I really only liked sweet bourbon. If it wasn't a sweet bourbon, I kind of wasn't into it. And Knob Creek, to me, isn't a super sweet bourbon. But it does have that nuttiness of the Jim Beam lineup. You can taste all of them. And when you taste them blind, they kind of start to resemble each other. Like, one thing we learned with blind tastings was that not to over-evaluate it, because your mind starts playing tricks on you. And that's what happened in some cases with some of our Jim Beam small batch collection, was that, you know, because Baker's and Booker's and Knob Creek are all pretty high strength, they all have that nutty profile, they start to kind of like blend in together. But anyway, I don't know if I mentioned it, but this is 50% alcohol, 100 proof. But yeah, Jim Beam kind of through and through, but with a little bit more going on, a little bit more exciting. Okay, let's taste it. Wait a minute, here I go again. I gotta do color. And this is a darker kind of a color to it. It's almost like a chocolate leather kind of thing going on. Very cool. I like the color. I'm going to give it an 8. I'm going to give it an 8 on the color. And that nose, I'm going to give it an 8 on the nose too. Okay, here we go. Drinking it. That big walnut arrival. Ooh, with a little bit of heat. Like I said, it's not a sweet bourbon. It's low sweet. Not even medium. Definitely a low sweet to me. And it has some mustiness to it. That kind of aged in cardboard box kind of feel. And it has a big finish. A big, warm, rye, spicy, peppery kind of finish, which can be off-putting to the novice. But those flavors, you grow to appreciate them. And right now I'm appreciating it. Now this whiskey is about $50 here in Canada, or here in BC. I'm not sure what Knob Creek 9 goes for in the States, but I'd assume it's probably closer to $25 or $30. But yeah, big bold spice. You know, the warming feeling going down your throat and kind of like landing here is big and lingering. Has a lingering effect in the chest. Again, another nice warming bourbon. You can even feel it in my ears a little bit back here. It's very nice. A little bit of the vanillas. This is a clovier one, I'd say. Quite clovey. because clove is kind of a distinctive flavor that, yeah, you can't really miss cloves. And I think, to me, it's represented quite big in Knob Creek. We had the Knob Creek, what was it? Single barrel, 120 proof store pick a couple of years back, and it is one of the best bang for your buck whiskeys that we've ever had. It also had 9 years on the age statement on the label, and when you actually did the research on it and read up on it, it was like 13 years old. And that's one thing they say about Knob Creek, is that Knob Creek does have a lot of stock of actually older whiskey to do special bottlings like that. So that's really going to be a great opportunity for the consumer here down the road. Every year it seems like at the annual spirit release that Knob Creek has some kind of interesting offering, whether that's those single barrel versions or higher proof ryes. But yeah, they're not as easy to pick up anymore because people have learned about that bang for your buck quality coming from Knob Creek. Okay, so in the taste, as far as score, I think Knob Creek 9 is a solid 8.5 on taste. I think the finish is an 8. And yeah, it's a solid bourbon. Like I said, we're going to have to get into the no age statement version to tell you whether or not they're on the same level. Could be a really interesting blind tasting. Could be a very difficult blind tasting. It's kind of like a comparison of the Elijah Craig 12 versus the Elijah Craig small batch with no age statement. Like it was very difficult to pick a winner in that blind challenge because they were able to really match the profile after reducing the age statement, or getting rid of the age statement. So this is actually a very comparable situation, I think, to Elijah Craig. So Elijah Craig was able to do it really successfully. So, maybe Knob Creek's able to do that. So I guess that's a future purchase, is going to be the regular Knob Creek. Now that I've said it so many times, we pretty much have to blind them. So anyway, I think that's all I've got for this one. Overall, really nice, and I can still feel it lingering. So there's a nice, spicy, warming, rye kind of finish on it. So if that's your kind of bourbon, then this is your kind of bourbon. So if you can find the 9, buy it up. Okay? Click like, leave a comment, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
See, drinking whiskey, describing all the flavors for you and me. Irish, Scotch, bourbon, and rye. If they like a bottle, they'll tell you why. Subscribe on YouTube.